Oh, oh, those are some wonderful words, Reverend Kathleen. Thank you so much. Oh, let me just take a breath. It is just so wonderful to be here with all of you today, coming to me from Prescott. It just, there's an excitement. There's a, there's just this feeling bubbling up inside of me. And first of all, I just want to say this joy that I'm feeling is in that knowing of the willingness of each and every one of you to come here, to step in, to create this community online, to forge that connection with each other. And in turn, you're forging just a beautiful connection with the divine. It's just magnificent to see all the ways that we are just figured out how we can just go a little deeper with each other. So I am just really delighted about that. And so as Reverend Kathleen mentioned, I live in Phoenix, Arizona, but I'm sure you can tell that, yeah, by this accent, that's not where I was born and raised. So I was born and raised in South Africa. And I get a lot of questions about what was the life like out there. And one of the big ones was, so did you hear lions roaring around you? Yeah, actually I did. I was born and raised on a farm. And right across the hill from where we lived, they had a lion reserve. And in the morning, I'd be woken up with the lions roaring, waiting for their breakfast. So that is part of that in South Africa. One of the wonderful things about growing up on that farm was that the farm became my church. So when we moved out to the farm, my father was like, no, I'm not getting up in the morning to come in on Sunday morning to take you guys into church. We've got to do that every morning of the week. So on Sunday mornings, we're staying home. As a result, I didn't get to go to the regular Christian church. I didn't get to be influenced by any of the dogma. So this was really where I first was introduced to the principles of science of mind. Because as we know, we follow the laws of nature. So I had that wonderful, fortunate gift of being able to know these principles from a very, very young age. And I remember the first time I did walk into a Science of Mind church, I was like, oh, wow, there are people that think the same way that I do. So I'm delighted with that. And so before I start rambling too far from the subject, let's go back and talk about what we're actually going to speak about today. And I know that you've been following the new beginnings this month, and today's talk is about fire in the belly. Yeah, but I've got to share a story with you first. Somebody shared the story with me. It made me laugh so hard. I was like, no, I have to share this with you today. This is the story. It begins with, what is celibacy? Yeah, and I promise that won't come up in my talk today. Celibacy can be a choice in life or a condition imposed by circumstances. So while attending a marriage weekend, Frank and his wife Anne listened to the instructor declare, it is essential that husbands and wives know the things that are important to each other. And so then he just leaned over and addressed just the men. He goes, gentlemen, can you name and describe your wife's favorite flower? Oh my goodness. Frank just got so excited. He was just like, oh, I got this. So he leaned over and he touched Anne's arm very gently and whispered, gold medal, all purpose, isn't it? Thus began Frank's life of celibacy. So I know I can make myself laugh. I can't hear you, but I'm sure we're laughing. So anyway, So let's get back to the talk. When we think about fire in the belly, so often we get that picture of somebody that is driven. You know, they have this power behind them and there's nothing else that they can see. You know, fire in the belly, it's that thing that ignites us and propels us. It's the feeling that urges us into action. But you know, unlike that knowing that it has to be a force of power that is driven, sometimes it can show up a little differently. It can actually show up more as just a knowing, just that feeling that is inside of us, that feeling that it's quietly moving us, impelling us in that direction, the direction where we've set our intentions, we've expressed our desires. And you know, sometimes we're not even really conscious about it. We're not even really aware that it's actually this fire churning inside of us until we see something that starts to show us or starts to manifest. And then we literally look at it and go, wow, there it is. There's that fire that I've been feeling. You know, Dr. Ernest Holmes, the founder of our teachings, he says it like this. He goes, there is an irresistible, universal, and divine urge within us to be happy, to be whole, and to express the fullness of life. The latent divinity within us stirs our imagination, and because of its insistent demand, impels and compels our growth. It impels us. The divinity within impels us. You know, and I remember when I was a young girl, I really wanted to dance. There was just this desire in me. I didn't even think too much about it, but it was this desire. And of course, I went to my dad, and he's like, yeah, that's just one more thing you want to do. So I was like, all right. But what good fortune would have is that both my parents were working at the time. So I would go home with one of my girlfriends and I would spend the afternoon with her. And she just happened to be taking dance lessons at the time. We had it at our school. After school, the ballet teacher would come in. And so she was going there for her classes, and I got to go along. Oh man, I just fell in love with it. It was, it just, it just made me feel whole, and I just felt comfortable. It was something that I just knew was mine to do. And I did. Eventually, my dad got the check, the bill for it. He was like, have you been dancing? I'm like, oh, yes, it's wonderful. And I loved it. And he said yes. And I am so grateful that he did, because I went on to have a career on stage and television dancing that lasted for 22 years. There was a fire in my belly back then that I didn't even really know what it was. I didn't even really recognize it as that. I was too young to even think about it. I just followed that divinity that was impelling me from within. And so, decades later, guess what? It shows up again. When I decided that it was time that I wanted to start my journey into ministry, there was that same little thing that came up inside of me, that feeling of knowing, of being moved forward in a direction that I didn't really understand. And let me tell you, I got a lot of great guidance from my mentors and fellow ministers at the time. They were like, if there's anything else you would like to do it. And I was a little confused. They were all on their way. They were in ministry already. They were like, this is not an easy path. It's not an easy path, the journey through school. It's not an easy path as a minister. It's not an easy life. So I listened to them and I went and I did some work around it. And I was like, but you know what happened? It always was the only thing left. I looked at everything else and there was nothing else but this. So the next time one of them asked me, I was very clear. I was able to say, yes, I have looked, I have done my work, and what is calling me into my belly right now is to move forward in this. And I am so grateful. I am so grateful that I did. I'm grateful that I recognized that feeling, that fire that had been ignited inside me, and let it grow and grow and grow, and it is still growing. So many people will say, I can't feel it. I have not had this feeling of this power inside me, this desire to move forward in a specific way. So what do I do? And so I look at them and I go, well, maybe we need to set aside some of those things that are in our minds, that are getting in the way, the obstruction of our vision. Maybe we need to do a little purification. And what we see in many of the religions that we honored on the path today, you know, in them, they honor a time of abstinence, a time to take for purification. And it is really truly believed that if we fast, whether it's fasting in the, you know, from the food or the water, or if it's fasting from thoughts, whatever it is that we're fasting from, it gives us a time to slow down and to begin that purification of mind and body. You know, this week marks the beginning of Ramadan. For those in the Islamic faith, this means that they will be fasting from sunrise to sundown each day. This fasting is known as Psalm. It's one of the 5 pillars of Islam. This time of fasting extends beyond food to include water and cigarettes, gambling, sex, gossip, judgment of others, and all things on those lines. Muslims believe that the absence of these activities creates a purification in the body, where one can truly see what needs to be seen around them, unencumbered by the distractions of food, water, etc. The commitment to faith through extended spiritual practice during this time, coupled with a purification of the body and mind through fasting, provides a clarity for what a person to see, what is mine to do. Rumi, he says this, he goes, when the brain and the belly burn from fasting, every moment a new song rises out of the fire. A new song rises out of the fire. So in the Christian traditional religion, we do Lent. And I say we because Science of Mind has its origins and history in Christianity. And for most of us, we don't really honor Lent, but I do. And I don't always honor it in the traditional way. For me, it is a time. It's a time when I can stop something. I can give up something. I can give myself that time to just relook, reevaluate, the time just to stop and let the body begin to purify, to stop, to allow myself to listen to what is going on inside of me, to see what song is being called up inside of me. So it's a really wonderful thing to do, to just take that time. And for me, the fact that it is finite helps me to focus, because so often we go, oh, I'm going to give something up, or I'm going to do this. And then it just seems to be going on with no boundaries in it. And with those boundaries, it gives us a time just to settle in, to know that we can do this, we can look, and if it's not working, maybe we can go on with our lives after that. But it is extremely important to take the time to allow that cleansing to happen. You know, I think you all know this little book, This Thing Called You, from Dr. Ernest Holmes. And in it, you know, he just writes so beautifully, and I couldn't help but want to share this with you today. He writes, I cleanse the windows of my mind that it may become a mirror, reflecting inspiration from the Most High. I do this not with strenuous effort, but through quiet contemplation, through gently reaching and affirming an inward recognition. I unlock the doorway of my consciousness and gently open it, that divine presence may flood my whole being with light, illume my being with its radiant glow, and direct my footsteps into the pathway of peace and joy. You know, when I read that, I just realize, yes, he spoke about it back then, and guess what? We are being given an opportunity to do that right here, right now. At this time that we find ourselves in, through quarantine or isolation or social distancing, we've been given ourselves some time to renew, to look again, to see what it is that we can purify. Well, we know that the world is doing it. We can see the earth, Mother Earth is cleaning up things all over the place as we're allowing ourselves to step back. We're allowing ourselves to stay home and honor this process for the world to just re-know its magnificent self. And what's happening for us is while we're doing that, there are these things bubbling up. I can see all around us, creativity is coming in from all angles. People are trying new things in so many ways. I mean, just every day on Facebook, somebody is doing something different or finding a new way to do it. These are all little fires that are burning in people's bellies because they are allowing the time to do it. And in turn, while we are doing that in ourselves, while we are actually going through a healing process in ourselves, the world too is healing. We're slowly allowing for this transformation to happen. We're letting go of how things were. We're seeing how they can be. Joseph Campbell says, we must let go of the life we've planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us. And in all of this, we know that there is a life waiting for us. And yet, even within that creativity, even within the cleansing, there's a little fear of, is there something there for me? How will I know? How will I see it? What can I do to truly allow for this time to really show up as that fasting and that purification, to allow that new fire to start burning in me so that I can bring forth something that is really even more meaningful, more powerful, more of a gift to the world. And one of the things we do, just as the world is doing right now, we go quiet. We go silent. And we listen. We go deep into that belly to start to feel the fire, to allow the energy to move through us. We start to look with eyes that are new, that have no preconceived notions of how it should be. And it is in this place and this time that we take for ourselves where we allow Spirit to be heard, where we allow Spirit to guide us, direct us, lay that path flat for us. We've done and we are doing our spiritual practices. We are setting intentions, these intentions and desires that are coming from this new fire that we're feeling. And then we just surrender. We surrender to Spirit. We rest back in that expectancy, knowing that the fire in the belly is actually Spirit, impelling us, guiding us, directing us down this new way of being. Dr. Ernest Holmes, he says, you exist so that divine feeling, fire, imagination, and creativity may be expressed through you. The Spirit comes to you with a new and fresh creativity. You need not ask what others have done or how they have done it. Just be yourself and express life as you find it. Express that new, that something that's bubbling up inside of you. Because here's the key. If you don't do it, it'll never be done in that wonderful, unique, magnificent way that only you can do it. As a unique expression of the divine, no one else can do it like you. So you really want to. It's important that you do, that you rest, listen, do those practices, and wait for that feeling to come up. Simon Sinek says this, what good is having a belly if there's no fire in it? So wake up, drink your passion, light a match, and get to work. So my invitation to you is this. Lay down the stuff, the busyness. I've got so much to do today. I don't have time for me. Don't fill your life with those things. Lay them down. Be still. Allow for your deepest intentions and desires to start bubbling up inside of you. And then drink your passion. And take those first steps forward on that path that is calling to you from deep, deep, deep inside of you, calling you forth to walk it in trust and in faith. And start today. Let it begin with you, with me, with each one of us today. Thank you. Let's take this to prayer. So as we breathe into this time, into this moment, into this absolute knowingness that the one power, the one source, the one universal creative mind, the one that I call God, is all that there is, that there is absolutely nothing else. And it is present right here, right now, in, through, and as every single one of us. It is working around us. It is working through us. It is having its way with us. And it is absolutely magnificent. And I know that this is the truth of who I am. I know that this is the truth of each and every one of us today. And as we walk our path today, and as we walk it through this coming week, and as we walk it out into the world, we are guided by this divine that is within us, that is bubbling up inside of us, this excitement, this fire in our belly that is coming forth, bringing forth this newness, these creations, this creativity, this desire to bring forth a new world, a world that is filled with love, overflowing with joy, overflowing with that magnificence that is the divine in each person. And it shows up individually as each one of us. And collectively it comes forth, just beaming forth as a light that lights the world even greater than we've ever seen before. So I know that this is done. I know that Spirit has said, yes, my beloveds, yes. I have heard your intentions. I have seen those desires expressed in you, and it is done. I hear you. I see you. I agree with you. And I honor you all with love. And together we say, and so it is.